There is a moment right before you turn the key where you just stop. You stand back, you look at it, and something in your brain tries to categorize what it's seeing, tries to file it under truck or SUV or luxury vehicle, and it just can't, because the 2026 Land Rover Defender 110 doesn't fit anywhere you already have a folder for. And that, before you've even touched the door handle. It tells you something important about what's coming. Land Rover didn't refresh the Defender 110 for 2026. That word, refresh, implies something cosmetic, something surface level, a new color, or a tweaked badge. What they actually did was far more deliberate. They looked at every criticism the previous generation attracted, every forum thread, every journalist who called it too soft or too expensive or too compromised, and they made a decision not to defend the old design, to replace what it stood for. The result is a vehicle that shouldn't work as well as it does, and that tension, that sense of something being slightly impossible, follows you everywhere with this truck. Start with the exterior. The 2026 Defender 110 keeps the boxy, upright silhouette that made the nameplate iconic. Those hard shoulders, that flat roof, the utilitarian proportions that say, without any ambiguity, this thing was designed to go places cars aren't welcome. But now there's something sharper underneath all of that. The front end has been reworked with tighter lines around the lighting signature. The hood sits lower at its center, feeding your eye toward a presence that feels more aggressive than the outgoing model without ever trying to look aggressive. It's the difference between a vehicle that flexes and a vehicle that simply doesn't need to. The new gloss black contrast elements on higher trims add depth without crossing into theatrical. The revised wheel arches sit fuller over 20 and 22-inch options depending on configuration. And the rear, that iconic flat tail with the externally mounted spare, remains untouched in its honesty. No one redesigned it to look sleeker from behind. It still looks like something built for a purpose, because it was. But here's where most people make their first mistake with this vehicle. They see the exterior, and they assume they already understand the interior. They imagine hard plastics, practical surfaces, the kind of environment that says it can handle mud because it wasn't precious to begin with. They open the door expecting utility. What they find instead stops them completely. The 2026 Defender 110's cabin has been reimagined around a concept Land Rover is calling purposeful luxury, a phrase that sounds like marketing until you're sitting inside it and you realize there is no better description. The seats on upper trims are wrapped in Windsor leather with contrast stitching that runs cleaner and tighter than anything in this segment. The dashboard flows in a single unbroken arc from door to door, finished in materials that feel considered rather than applied. There is genuine metal where other manufacturers use painted plastic. There is real texture where competitors offer the illusion of it, and then, right next to all of that refinement, there is a rubberized floor that you can hose down. There are grab handles engineered for leverage rather than aesthetics. There is a gear selector that feels like it was designed for someone wearing gloves. The juxtaposition isn't an accident, and it isn't a compromise. It is, somehow, the whole point. The updated Pivi Pro infotainment system anchors a 13.1-inch curved touchscreen that responds faster than the previous generation and integrates over-the-air updates so the vehicle you drive in year 3 is genuinely more capable than the one you drove off the lot. Wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto are standard. The 3D surround camera system has been upgraded with higher resolution imaging and improved low-light processing, which matters more than it sounds when you're navigating a trail edge at dusk. Meridian audio is available in a 29-speaker configuration that belongs in a concert hall, not a vehicle that's about to ford a river. And yet there it is. The rear seat space in the 110 wheelbase has always been the quiet argument for this configuration over the shorter 90 in 2026. Land Rover has made that argument louder. 3 adults sit genuinely comfortably across the second row. Headroom is generous in a way that feels almost excessive until you remember that this vehicle sits tall for a reason. Cargo behind the second row is substantial. And if you spec the optional rear jump seats, you're suddenly in a vehicle that carries 7 people into terrain that most minivans would refuse from the driveway. But none of that, not the interior, not the technology, not the space compares to what happens when you actually drive it. The powertrain lineup for 2026 has been restructured in a way that resets expectations across every trim. The base configuration carries a turbocharged inline-six with mild hybrid integration, producing output that would have been considered performance territory 5 years ago. Response from rest is immediate in a way that feels incongruent with the vehicle's mass. There is a brief moment where your brain says this shouldn't accelerate like this, and then it just keeps going. The mild hybrid system recovers energy under braking and supplements torque at low speeds, which means the Defender pulls hard from the moment you ask it to rather than building toward it. The plug-in hybrid variant extends the lineup into a space where very few off-road focused SUVs operate with any credibility. Electric-only range covers the commute, combined output covers the highway, and the transition between modes is so seamless that you stop noticing it after the first 20 minutes, which is exactly how it should work. Then there is the V8, Land Rover has brought back a supercharged V8 option to the Defender lineup in 2026, and its presence in this vehicle does something specific to the conversation around what this truck is. It produces figures that create a genuine problem for sports SUVs in the same price range. The sprint numbers are the kind that require a second reading, and the sound, the low aired exhaust note under hard acceleration, is entirely at odds with the vehicle's boxy silhouette in a way that is, without exaggeration, deeply entertaining. On-road, the Defender 110 has addressed one of its previous criticisms directly. The air suspension system has been recalibrated for 2026, with new damper tuning that flattens body roll without killing the ride quality. At highway speed, the truck is composed in a way that makes long distances feel effortless. Through corners, it leans. It is not pretending to be a sports car, but it leans with control, with intention, in a way that communicates what the chassis is doing rather than hiding it from you. That honesty in the dynamics is part of what makes it so satisfying to drive quickly. The steering has gained weight and precision over the outgoing model, not sports car. Wait, that would be dishonest in something this size. But enough feedback that you feel connected to what the front wheels are doing, which matters enormously when those front wheels are picking their way across uneven terrain, and then you take it off the road, and the entire conversation changes. The Terrain Response 3 system in 2026 brings a new level of automation to a platform that was already one of the most capable off-road systems in production. You select your surface, grass and gravel, snow, and the system reconfigures throttle mapping, transmission behavior, differential lock strategy, suspension height, and traction control intervention simultaneously. Not sequentially, at once. The vehicle adjusts itself faster than a driver could manually manage each variable. And it does it continuously as conditions change beneath you. Weight depth is rated to 900 millimeters. That number sits there calmly in the spec sheet, and if you've ever watched another vehicle attempt half that depth and fail, you understand what it represents. The raised air intake, the sealed electrical systems, the chassis engineering that allows the Defender to push water aside rather than collect it. None of this is theater. It is the result of decades of serious engineering that the nameplate earned in environments most people will never visit. The new electronic rear differential lock, now standard on higher trims, combined with the all-wheel drive system's ability to send virtually all available torque to a single wheel when necessary, means that in the conditions where other luxury SUVs quietly give up and wait for a tow, the Defender 110 is still moving, still finding traction, still climbing, and this is where the price conversation becomes genuinely complicated. The 2026 Defender 110 opens at a figure that positions it squarely against the established luxury SUV segment against vehicles that are faster on a racetrack, more refined in a hotel valet, more recognizable at a school pickup. On paper, that comparison is straightforward. Then you add what the Defender does, off-road genuinely and repeatedly and without asterisks, and the comparison becomes something else entirely. Land Rover has always lived in a specific tension. The brand carries legacy weight that works both for and against it, depending on who's in the room. There are buyers who arrive for the badge and leave overwhelmed by the capability. There are off-road purists who arrive skeptical of the leather and leave converted by the terrain performance. And there is a growing segment, people who live outside cities, who travel to places roads don't reach, who want the long drive to feel as considered as the destination for whom the Defender 110 in 2026 is simply the most honest answer available.